Welcome to Jim's Code Corner. My name is Jim Belcher. Welcome back. We are finally going to start doing some front-end development today. If you remember last time, we went ahead and we did the UI portion of the create task ticket. So we put up a field, put a description in, add our button to create a task, and add a table to display these new tasks. None of it is functional yet, but that's what we're going to do today. So what do you say we just go ahead and get right into that? Okay, so I'm going to start by first looking what we have here. Um, I like to use objects. Since we have Druze and TypeScript, we're able to do that. So I'm actually going to create a model object, and that way we have actually work with real things here. So I'm going to start by creating a folder. Did I say create folder or file? I think I said file. I don't want that. Let's go ahead and create a new folder. We'll call it models. Collapse that. I put it inside. Yes. Okay, so now we'll create a new file here, and let's just call it todo item.ts. And that's going to be our model object. And it's really easy to do this in TypeScript. I'm just going to export a class. It's going to be called todo item, and it's going to have two fields here. First one's going to be a number. It's going to be the ID, so we can reference it later when we're deleting and editing. And the other one's going to be a description. And that's just going to be a string. And just so things are defaulted here, let's go ahead and default that to an empty string. Okay. And let's put a constructor in there. And values, object. It's going to take an object in. It's going to default to an empty object. And let's have it do actually assigning things for us. So it actually takes a JSON and does stuff with it. So it makes things a little easier to work with. So object.assign. And we're going to take this object and we're going to feed in the values that we get in. There we go. So clean that up a little bit. There. Now we have our first model object. It's going to be our to-do item. And then we can use that throughout the application now. So the next thing we're actually going to do is start writing code for, I think, the component, and then we'll work our way to the service layer. So let's go ahead and move on back to the component. Okay, and we'll open up the unit test as well. I'll make the screen a little bigger so we can actually see it. Let's go ahead and go to full screen. Cool. Next up, what we're going to do is we're going to have to make our unit test run. So I'm going to go back to my here, and I'm going to look for my terminal. So you'll see I actually had the front end already running. Let's go ahead and run the back end as well. So we'll do Gradle boot run to run our back end. And while that's going, we'll go ahead and do ng test. You know, it's already had these pre-prepped to be in the correct folders. And I haven't made any changes since last time, so our unit test should still pass. So wait for these two things to build here. Okay, so you can see our backend is running and our front end is running now with our unit test, and it looks like they're still passing. Perfect. Okay, so we'll keep our eye on that as things go. Every time we make a change. Right, so let's go ahead and think about what we're going to do here. Do a little prep work and get things moving. So one of the things we're going to need to do is we're going to actually put our form controls in place. We'll do that in the HTML, and we'll just a little bit to do in there, actually in the component as well. And then we'll have to put our logic in to actually save it. So we'll have to call a service and actually save this thing as well. Okay, so first of all, this is going to be a reactive form. There's a couple ways of actually doing handling forms in Angular 4, and one of them is reactive. That's my personal preference, so that's what I'm going to demo here. So let's start by writing a test. So we'll go to our spec here. We're going to import some things here. just to make things ready to go. So let's import, let's see, we're going to need a form builder and a form group. And we're going to go ahead and import those from Angular forms. Cool. The other thing we're going to need in our spec, let me think here, our spec, actually we don't need that in our spec, what am I thinking? Excuse me. We undo that. What we are going to need, I'm just going to bring it back because we're doing that same file folder, but we're going to go ahead and do reactive. I just said it too, I can't believe I messed this up. So forms module. So we're going to bring the forms module in as long as, and addition to the reactive forms module. That should give us everything we need. Honestly, I don't even think we need the forms module. I know we need reactive one. So we'll probably try it without and see how it works. Okay. So next thing we're going to do, we're going to have to configure our test bed in order to, excuse me, have this all work together. So see how much we could do. We really don't need the service yet, but we do need to do some imports. We need to import our form stuff here. So we'll do imports, colon, and we'll bring in that React, those two modules we just imported. Forms module. Yeah, now they'll maybe be available to us to test now. And let's see, I suppose there ain't much we can really test at the moment. So let's go ahead and make sure we didn't break any unit tests by doing that. Looks like we're still good. Cool. So let's go ahead and prep now the actual component, and it'll be good there. Sorry, I know I keep going back and forth. You're probably going to be getting dizzy. So here's what we're going to be needing here. We're going to actually be importing things here, and we'll be making use of them. So this we're actually going to need that form builder and form group. So form builder, form group, and from, once again, Angular forms. Cool. And we're also going to be using that new model object we made, that to-do item model object. So we're going to go ahead and import that guy as well. Item. And the path to that is going to be, let's see, should be back 2 folders, models, to-do item. Perfect. There, that'll be available to us as well now. Cool. So the next thing we're going to want to do to make this all usable here is, think about this for a moment. We're going to create a form. So let's start. Let's do it underneath the constructor. I don't like things being above my constructor. I thought that should be the first thing we do. Probably above the constructor and up below the constructor and above the ng and on the next. That's a function. So we'll make something called a to-do form, and that's actually going to be a form group. And we're going to need an array of things for our table. So let's go ahead and create to-do items. And that's actually going to be a to-do item array. And we're going to have to make that equal an empty array for now. Nice. Okay, so that's defaulted there. We're going to need access to that form builder. So we're going to go do it in the constructor. We're going to do private form builder. Some people like to use like FB here. I don't know. I prefer long names. Readability matters to me. Form builder. Okay, cool. So now that's available to us. So what I'm going to do next, I'm actually going to go ahead and create another private function here. I'll call it create form. Private create form. And what we're going to do here is going to do this dot to do form, that one we'll create above. We're going to equal that to this dot form builder, which we got access to through the constructor, a group. And it's going to be an object with one thing in there. We'll just call it item. Cool. So what that's going to do is once I call that function here, create form, it's actually going to create our form object for us. It's going to instantiate this guy here for us, so we don't have to worry about that. Okay, I think the next part we need to do here is actually go into the HTML. Double check my unit test. Yep, we're still good. So let's go ahead and open up the HTML. And what we're going to do, we're going to actually put this form together now. So we have a form tag or element here that's going to need actually a reference to a form, excuse me, square brackets, form group, and that's going to be called to-do form, and that corresponds to that to-do form that we created on the component. I'm not going to tell it to, I'm going to tell it to no validate there. I don't want no unneeded validation going on. I'll decide what needs to be validated here. And yeah, okay, so that's going to work there. Okay, and next we're going to need to make our form controls do something. So form control name equals item. So once again, that corresponds to that form builder we made on another page. Okay, so we won't do anything with the table yet. We won't do anything with this button yet. We're just going to make the form all wired up here. That's pretty much what we're doing here. We're wiring up the form. So let's go back to unit test. Nothing's failing yet. Cool. Nothing really should fail. There ain't much to fail. The only thing that could fail, I suppose, is the component wouldn't build anymore. So we're good there. So now we're going to start writing our first function. It's going to be a submit function for that button. So I think we need to go to our unit tests for the component. And we're going to start running a unit test for this guy. So what we're going to need in order to be able to run a test is we're going to need access to something, a service, that actually is going to run the call to the API. So we haven't actually made this thing yet, but we're going to go ahead and import it. We'll call it to-do item service. Okay, from, and where that thing is going to be located is going to be similar to that model. We're going to create another folder called services, and it's going to be to-do item.service. So that's going to be red for now until we actually go and create that thing, which we'll clean all that up in a bit. So from here, we're going to create a variable called to-do service. And we're going to use this guy as something we can spy on. To-do item service. Cool. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to need one more thing imported up here. So in addition to the service, we're going to use this idea of a stub. So basically, instead of using the real service, we're actually going to use a stubbed object, and that way we can easily spy on things without worry about actually hitting HTTP, making HTTP request. Excuse me. So it's still going to be in services. It's going to be right along with this to-do item. So that's what we'll call it to-do item .service.stub. Cool. So now let's make it use the stub instead of actually using the real object. So what we're going to do, we're actually going to override. Oh, excuse me, I got to do a couple more things here. We're going to need access to that stub. So first, providers, colon. That's an array. And we're going to need that to-do item service stub. There we go. That looks pretty good. Okay, so now what we're going to do, we're going to override. So we're going to override, as I mentioned here, override the component, and we're going to tell what component to do. It's going to be the to-do item list component, and we're going to need to put an object in there that has set, and we're going to tell that to have an object. That's going to have its own providers. Okay, and these providers, oh, that is not an object. That should be an array. And we'll tell this thing to provide when it's asking to provide a to-do item service, we're going to tell it to use class to do item service stub instead. And I'm getting error here. Let's see what I got going on. Close of an object, close an array, close of an object. I think I'm missing a close of an object here. There we go. All right, so what yeah, like I mentioned, it's going to use the stub now. Whenever we talk to inject a to-do service, it's actually going to inject a to-do items service stub. So now in this before each down here, what I want to actually do is I'm going to instantiate my to-do item service so I can actually go ahead and start stubbing that thing out, or mocking that thing out, I suppose, with spies. So service equals a fixture dot debug element dot injector. So basically we're going to be getting the to-do service that's actually injected into the component. We're saying get reference to that to-do item service, and when it does, I'll rename this to be a little more accurate, to-do item service. So we're actually going to be getting the to-do stub here because we're saying, hey, I want the thing that's there that was injected for to-do item service, which we're actually going to be injecting the stub. So we'll be getting that here and using that guy in this to-do item service here. Cool. We'll save that guy off. Let's check our test, which they better fail because we didn't create some things here. So let's get this thing creating so that the unit test actually go back to passing, and then we'll actually create our test for the onSubmit button. So in order to make this thing pass, we need to create some files. So let's go ahead and first we'll create a folder, call it services. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to actually use the CLI tool to do this. So I'm gonna split this thing vertically. Oh, yeah, that's fine. Use this guy here. I'll go ahead and let's see, CD, desktop, YouTube, series 1, my to-do, web. There we go. Cool. So I'm actually now going to go into the source folder and the app folder, and we're going to find our services folder, and there we are. Sweet. Okay. So we're going to use the APR CLI tool to actually make this service for us. So I'm going to do ng g for generate service, and we're going to call it to do item. Wait for it to do its job. And this thing should now be accessible to us. If we go back to our code, we'll find in our services folder, it should, where'd it go? That's interesting. Maybe I need to refresh. There they are. Okay. So it created a couple files for us to create our service, which is just an empty class here, and then it created a spec for us as well. What it did not create is a stub, so I'm going to go ahead and create that guy. I'm going to have to do some renaming here. That's fine. So I forgot CLI push dashes in there. So we're going to do to-do item dot service dot stub dot ts. All right, excellent. So now we have our stub file available to us, and we have our service available to us. So let's go ahead and fix these paths here, because CLI likes to put dashes in there. Item, and that's certainly not that. To do item dot service dot stub. Oh, it's mad because now I need to make that stub actual class here. So in that stub, we'll do an export class and to do item service stub. Okay, and we'll go ahead and do that. Just an empty guy. See if our spec is a little happier now. And it is. Cool. Let's check our tests, see how they're doing. It's rebuilding now. So let's wait for that guy. And our tests are passing again. Cool, we have 3 passing tests again. Well, again, we only had 2 before, but we get this spec got created when we create the service. So now we're going to start writing our test for our submit button. So let's go ahead and start doing that. So we're going to describe. Spelling is hard. On submit, because that is the function we're going to be making here. And we'll say in our callback, do this guy, and this is going to have an it in there. Describe it. And it should add a to-do item to the to-do item array. Okay. And once again, well, that's going to have its own little function in there. Okay, cool. So let's go ahead and add some semicolons in there, clean that up. And we're going to start doing stuff. So what's going to happen is it's going to take the information from the model. It's going to we're actually going to feed that model into this function here. We're going to take that information, we're going to push it up to the to-do service, which we haven't really done anything with yet, and that's going to return an observable, which we're going to subscribe to, and then we're just going to add something to the array. So pretty straightforward. You'll see what I mean if you don't quite understand what I'm saying there. You'll see what I mean in a moment here. So on to-do item service, marker by, and we're going to call that save to do item. We're going to call that function that. So when we call that thing, then we want it to and return a value of an observable dot of ID 1. We'll assume just it creates a new one, and item of test. And right now that's kind of error. For a couple reasons. First of all, this should be an object inside this observable of. And this of has an error because we actually need to import the observables in there. So go ahead and do that real quick. So import, wait, we did do that. Not sure why we have an error at the moment. 1 second, let's take a peek. Because observable of is a function. Let's see. I feel like we're missing something silly here. Just not sure what. I'm returning a value. Well, I guess we should start by actually reading what the error is, huh? Let's save it. Sometimes this IDE is weird and see. Property of does not match, does not exist in type of observable. Well, that should be a lie. I'm pretty sure it does. Oh, okay. That's because I'm returning observable here. I'm injecting or importing observable. I want to actually do Rx. There we go. It's a little newer version. Okay, cool. So now we're spying on our service that we created, that we're going to be using. So now let's actually call our function. So component.onSubmit, and let's go ahead and feed an object into that, our model, and our mock models here are going to look like let's see, item. That's definitely how you spell item. And it's going to say test. And that should match the output. It's just the output's going to return an ID with it, which is fine. Okay, so now we got to do some stuff to make Angular happy. So fixture detect changes, because Angular is going to list for a change there. Then we're going to do fixture. This is going to require asynchronous call here. We're going to do fixture.when stable. Then, and it's going to be a function. So when this thing is stable, so when it's done with that asynchronous call, then we're going to actually, I like to do this. I'm not really quite sure if it's necessary, but we're going to listen for changes again. detect more changes. And then we're going to expect that our component dot to do items dot length should be bigger, so it should equal 1. That will be our test. Of course, we got a little red line here because that thing doesn't exist yet, and our test should certainly fail because, once again, that thing doesn't exist yet. Okay, so now we have our test written. Basically, we're going to hit the submit button, and it's going to submit the form to the service, and the service is mocked out, and that service is going to return this object in the observable of, which is fine. And then we're going to wait for it to be stable, so basically when the service returns something, the mock does, it's going to go into the submit, and it's going to increment, or it's going to push our object we got back into that array that we created. And then we're just expecting that to be 1 because we didn't put anything else in there. Okay, cool. So let's go ahead and write that function now. It should be pretty simple to do that. One thing we need to do prior, though, is we need to actually feed that form into the function, because if we don't have that, then it's never going to get the model. So go back up here to form, and we're going to do ng submit. So when we submit this form, it's going to call on submit, which is the function we're going to be creating here in a moment, and it's going to take to do form. Once again, references the object we created, and we're just going to send the value of it up. Cool. So when we push the submit button, it's going to call this on submit and push the value of all of our objects, this form control pretty much, into that model, or into that function. Let's go back into our function here, for our class. Oh, can't talk today. And what we're going to do now is going to start creating that function. So let's go ahead and create on submit. And we're going to feed let's say a model into this thing. We're going to say this dot, no, we can't call this dot because we don't have a service in here, do we? We need the service first imported into here. So let's import that guy. Import the to-do item service from dot dot slash services slash to-do item service. Okay. So let's go ahead and make this thing a provider as well, so we can actually use it. Providers, and we'll say to-do item service. Cool. Next thing we need to do is actually need access to that. So we'll do private to do item service, and that is going to be of type of to do item service. Okay, so now we could do this, that to do item service dot, we were going to call it save to do item. Notice I'm doing any validation because I'm just making this as simple as possible right now. We're going to feed our model into that guy. And we'll subscribe. And what's going to happen here is we're going to get back a to-do item. And that to-do item is going to go into that array. So this dot to-do items dot push, and we're just going to simply put the to-do item that we got back. We will only get back one from the API, if you recall. Okay, so now this is not happy because that function does not exist in the service. So let's go ahead, and we're not going to write the whole thing. We're just going to make a quick little stub of that, and then we'll write a test to be a little bit more complete later. It's just going to make the function exist. So here in our service, we are going to do save to do item, to do item. It's going to take in a to do item. So I don't know how to put together. It's going to return an observable. To do item. It's going to be returned back. Okay. And let's have it return null for now. I think I'll be satisfied with that. So I got some imports I have to do, obviously. So let's go ahead and do that. Import. First of all, I'm going to change that from that to Rx. And we're going to do item from dot slash models slash to do item. Cool. And all right, sure, cool, it's happy. So that's happy. Component should be happy. Let's check our test, see how it's doing. It's still failing. Let's figure out what's going on here. All right, save to do item method does not exist. If you recall, we created that stub. That stub has to do the exact same thing. So what I like to do with my stubs is give them the very basics of what the service would do. So in our stub, let's go ahead and say save to do item. And we're going to return observable of, just like that. So very, very simple. And IDE likes to put that in there. I don't like that one. I like this one. Okay. So now that's going to pull that guy in. So let's see how our test does. Watch it over here. See if it's any happier. Okay, our test is passing. In theory, running code right now should work. Obviously, we can't save anything because we didn't complete the service yet. So what do you say we go ahead and do that part next real quick, and we should be able to test and see how this thing does. So there's a bit of typing when it comes to the services. There it is. Especially when it comes to unit testing it. So the front end should be good. Let's undo the service now. Sweet. We're going to need some things here imported, and I do have some of those queued up because there's a lot of typing here, and I don't want to type for a half hour just for the sake of typing. So I'm going to be importing the HTTP module, HTTP response, base request options, XHR backend, and response options from Angular HTTP. And you'll see why we need those in a few moments. The other one we're going to need is for our testing environment itself, we're going to need a mock backend and mock connection. That way we're not making real asynchronous calls. So, and we'll actually import as well async here. We're going to need that guy. I believe that's all we'll need. We got our two item service here, which we're actually testing. Cool, I think that's it. So let's go ahead and start doing this. So in our test bed, first thing we're going to want to do is import our HTTP module. HTTP module. Give us access to everything we need there. And in providers, we need a bit from this guy. So we need our two-item service, obviously. We need a mock backend. We're going to actually do a little work here next with base request options, I believe. Yep. And we're going to create another object. Let's go ahead and back this thing up. Take it up here. That makes more sense. So the object we'll put here. Okay. So we're going to say provide. We did that provide earlier and use. We're going to do something similar. HTTP. So when we say we want HTTP, we're actually going to use a factory this time. That factory is going to take a couple of things in there. It's going to take a backend and options. And that's going to go to a new HTTP backend options. So basically, we're making a fake backend. That's also going to need, it's going to depend on some stuff here. Depend on the mock backend, which is that's basically what we're feeding into that function, and the base request options. Okay, cool. So that'll allow us to actually do a mock there instead of actually calling a real service. All right, so next up, let's go ahead and write our first test. So describe the save to do item, comma, call parentheses there, and it's an object, and it should return a to-do item. And once again, we're going to put our, actually we're going to do something a little different this time. We're going to actually do an async inject what we're going to inject is our to-do item service and a mock backend. So we're going to use those guys now. And those are going to get that into, let's see, a service and backend. There we go. That's one of those guys. Okay, cool. So now we are cool to actually write our test. So what we're going to do, we're going to say when we do the backend, create a connection. Our background connections, excuse me. Subscribe to it. So I'll call my connection C. It's pretty close to the variable, so I don't mind doing that. So C dot mock respond new response, which is going to return a new response options, and that what is going to be returned is an object, and it's going to return a status code of 200, and the body that is returned is going to equal, let's see, we're going to JSON stringify this thing. It's going to hold everything we needed, so we needed two things to come back. Let's have it do, I think it was description, I think it's what we called it in the back end, if I'm not mistaken. We can always do some refactoring if we don't like our names here. Description, colon, test, and it'll return an ID of 5, sure. So that should give us our backend, something we will actually hit when we actually make our API calls. So let's go ahead and make that call now. So service dot save to do list item. That's a function, and we're going to subscribe to it, and we're going to say response. So we can expect two things. We can expect that response dot ID is going to equal 5. Oh, how we do that? To equal 5. And we can also expect the response dot description to equal test. So we can expect those two things to happen. So there's our test. Let's see if anything passed, which I'm very strongly be really concerned if it did, because we didn't actually grade anything yet. Okay, well, we have a couple failures. Cool. So now what we're going to do, we're actually going to write that service and make it pass. So I'm going to open that guy up. And right now we're returning null, so it certainly is not going to pass for doing that. So let's do a return, and we'll do this dot HTTP, which is not available to me yet. I forgot to do some imports. Once again, I have these kind of queued up, so I'm going to import these things real quick. That way I'm not holding you up. We need that. We have observable Rx already. The other thing we're going to need is rxjs slash add slash operator slash map. And you'll see why we need that guy in a minute. You have our to-do item there. I think that's everything we need. Cool. It's not happy again because we're not returning anything. So now we'll return. Kind of important that I do a couple things here first. First of all, in the constructor, private http :http, give it access to that guy. And we're also going to need a URL. So everything that comes to the service is going to use the same base URL. So we'll call it base URL is going to be equal to /API /v1 /to-do item. And that's the same URL we used when we actually created our API. Okay, so this is going to be a post request once again. So let's do return this .http .post, and we're actually going to post this .to-do the base URL, excuse me, and we're just going to feed in the to-do item that we're actually passing in. Okay, then what we're going to do is take the response of that guy, and we're going to actually not catch, we're going to do a mapping. So we're going to run through each of those things. Response is going to be a type response. And we're going to go through each one of those, and we're going to turn that into JSON. There we go. That should be our service. Let's see how we do. And we still have 2 failures. So let's go ahead and I think we're going to need this guy anymore. So let's delete that bash. Make this guy a little bigger. Let's actually look at it and read it. Invalid provider, ng module, dynamic test module, only instance of provider allowed. Interesting. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to pause the video, find out what's causing that issue, and then I'll start back up. Alright guys, I'm back. Sorry about that. So it turned out to be something really simple, which usually is. So turns out I had a typo here. I was saying providers when it should be provide. So that caused our issue. It caused our test, everything to fail here. But now you can see we have 5 passing tests. So we have our services passing our test. We have our component passing their test. I think the only thing we'll have to do here is do a manual test, and we can check that out. So I have it built over here, so we should be able to go to port 4200. The only thing I'm not doing is running it properly with the proxy, so it won't actually hit the backend. So let's go ahead and do that. npm run start. That way it runs with our proxy. So we'll give that a moment. While that's building, don't forget guys to leave any comments. I would like suggestions of where you'd like this series to go. Pretty much the rest of the series is going to be pretty much copy and paste what we just did, so wouldn't mind some more suggestions of what you guys want to see. Okay, so let's go to 4200. Oh, that is not how you do 4200. Uh-oh, that ain't good. It seems to have blown up. Can't bind the form group because it isn't a known property of form. That is probably because a module is not being imported properly. So let's take a look at our component. Okay. So let's go into now here. And one other thing while we're here, I actually added this to providers as well. But we need the reactive form module actually in here as well. That's what we're missing. So import. We have our forms there. We'll do this reactive form module, and we'll go ahead and add that to this guy here. Reactive form module. Let's see how it does. Let it rebuild itself. It should. And it's rebuilding. Wait for it to finish. It's done. Hey, it came back to life. Cool. So let's open up our network panel. We will go ahead and clear that out so we can actually see some things here. And let's do test. Okay, cool. So look, we got a 200 back. It was a post request as we told it to. Was preview the response. We got a 1, but we also got a description of null back. So that's interesting there. So it looks like it might have probably saved it, but it looks like we have an issue somewhere in our backend potentially. Or it might be because we are feeding it in as item instead of description. So we'll have to do a little bit of checking on that in a moment here. Actually, we'll probably should do that now. So let's go ahead and look at the request here. See what the request looked like. As we can see, item was empty. It was empty there. So we're having a problem here on our front end. So let's take a look at our component. Don't know why I try to scan up there. It's pointless. And let's take a peek here. So we got going on. So I think what's going on is we're actually trying to feed this guy in this model, and it's here, and it's just not corresponding. So let's go ahead and fix that. So let's create a constant. We'll call it my to-do item. Oh no, that's a terrible name. How about this? To-do item. To save. There we go. We know what that's clearly for. So we'll call it to-do item. And we're going to equal that equal to, we'll say ID will equal null, because we're just saving it right now, so there's no need to have an ID there. But description, that should be model dot item. That should fix our issue. So now we're creating this new object, which is the correct type, and we're going to feed that into here. And that hopefully will do the trick. So let's double check, make sure it's done rebuilding. It looks like it is. My unit tests are running. Hopefully they should still pass. Wait for that to finish before we even try it. Okay, but they passed, good. So let's try that again. So we'll write another one test and go ahead and clear this out so we can actually find it. Got 200 back again. We didn't break it. That's good. And this time it's still the same. Oh, bummer. ID and description is null this time. Oh, that ain't good. Well, not both null. One's empty, but that's certainly not what we were expecting. Back to the code. Let's take a look. See here. So we're doing a model dot item, which corresponds to this guy here. I'm thinking there might be something wrong with our HTTP. So let's take a peek here, figure out what's going on. So do an ng submit. We know that's running, obviously, because make an HTTP call. We called it to do form, and we're feeding in the value, so that makes sense. Form control name is item, except this is not how you spell for control. I'm going to pick that one up. Okay, let that refresh itself. Test. It's again. 200 response. Hey, there we go. So on our first one, we got the extra got back here. Sweet. Okay, so we got one last thing to do here, and that is going to be to actually display our items on the screen. We can do that in just a couple seconds here. That's going to be really easy. So let's back to the HTML. We have our header. Let's go ahead and create a body. So we need a tr, and we're doing /ng4. So we're going to be looping through our array that now actually has stuff in it. Well, we'll be getting stuff in it. To do item, it's going to get back of to do items. Okay. And the TD let's go ahead and add the description here. And so we'll do to do item dot description, and we are going to need an action, but we'll just leave it empty for now. TD, just empty TD. Okay. So we should be able to now see, well, the table will still be empty just because we have nothing calling at the API to actually load it. So let's call test2 and see if it actually adds it to that table. And there we go. So we can see here on the table, it took the HTTP request and did that. We're good there. So I think that's all I really wanted to cover in this video. Be nice if we actually cleared out that form. So let's see if we did that real quick. So what we're going to do here is we're going to actually clear out the form, I think, real quick. That's going to be easy enough. This, that, to do form dot reset. Make sure we didn't break any of our unit test. Shouldn't. There's no reason why that should have broke unit test. And then, there we go. Cool. So with any luck now, test 3 should reset this form here. And it does. Cool. So now I feel a lot better about that. It looks a little cleaner. So that's it for adding a task. We can now go in the Trello. We'll mark that ticket as complete. So go ahead and open that up. We'll say that is done. And we'll move that over here. So next time we will go through and we'll actually populate that list. Now that we got like our first full API and front end part done, the rest of the tickets should move pretty quick. They're simple CRUD. We already have the APIs. Well, we don't have the APIs written, but we have the first one done. And it's just pretty much following patterns from here on out. So it should be pretty simple. So that's all I got for you today. Don't forget to like. Please leave those comments. I'm really would like some feedback. And don't forget to subscribe. And thank you very much. Have yourself a good one.